Autumn,
Let's start with Autumn.
Autumn, you're here.
Hi, it's so weird sitting on like this side. I'm Autumn Wild. I was the student board member, Eastern Washington, 3 students ago, I think. Recently, I got off in 2020, so yeah, it's good to be back.
It's good to see you, Autumn.
Say goodbye. Yeah.
Stephanie or Julie, I can't really tell who's online so far. Do you want to maybe call folks off? Oh, I see Joe over there.
Hi everyone, I hope you all can hear me okay. Yeah, oh my gosh, feels so cool to be back. Just quick intro, my name is Joe Hoffman. I was the Western Washington Student Board member between the years of 2017 and 2019. And thank you again for having me. It's such a joy to be back.
See you, Joe.
Alrighty, I'll go. Yeah, I'm Baxter Hirschman. I was the Western Washington student rep from 2015 to 2017. There's only a few faces that I actually remember from my time on the board, but happy to see everybody and hope all is going well.
Autumn, I'm going to trade places with you so folks can see you.
Oh, sorry, go over here. Okay, that works.
Oh, yes, Joe and Baxter, can you please tell us where you're at now?
Yeah, so I'm currently back in my hometown in Everett. As some of you may remember, I go to school on the East Coast, but I'm here for the summer. I'm interning at a local law firm. So yeah, having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and then I'm zooming in from Fox Island, Washington. I live out of country, but I'm home for the summer, and then I'm headed back out at the end of September. But yeah, just back in Washington.
So where do you live, Baxter?
I currently live in Spain. This past year, I was an English teacher. Well, I was an English assistant and an English teacher. I had 2 different jobs, but then this coming year, I have a job more related to my field of study in university. And so I'll be pursuing something a little bit more closely related to like my end goal in my career in Spain. So yeah.
So if that is everybody, I believe that is everybody. So we're going to move on to some panel questions. I'm sure you all are going to relish the opportunity to talk about yourselves. So that'll be fun. But I've got a few here, but I would love for this to like be like a real conversation because I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you all. It's pretty cool to get to like interface with people who did what I'm doing now. So that's pretty cool. But I'll begin with like, the first kind of boilerplate question, and then we can move from there. So the first one is, now that you all have spent some time off of the board, what advice would you give your younger, your past, when you were on the board, when you were a member? I just totally mangled that because I wasn't expecting it to be like that, but I think you get the idea. Any one of y'all can go first, whoever wants to.
Oh, people are looking at me. Okay, I can go. I think just to keep being a self-advocate and fight for what I think is right and just keep fighting the good fight. I was on the board, I was sometimes scared to say my mind, but I did it anyway. And so I would tell my younger self, don't be scared. So.
Joe, if you want to go next, I'm just picking people out of the hat.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that I would remind my past self to just remind myself that I'm exactly where I need to be. I remember being so overwhelmed by imposter syndrome when I was first on the board. But I think to you, Pavan, and just to all the new incoming student board members, you were chosen for a reason. So definitely use that to your advantage. Always speak up, even if you think you're going to say sounds wrong, because it's not. And it's also likely that somebody else was wondering the same thing and you just spoke up and asked about it. Also just to be a sponge, learn all you can and just put your intentions into actions. Yeah, I think I would also just remind myself that, to prioritize taking care of myself. I think a lot of what I was advocating for on the board, which was, social and mental health and mental well-being, I was actually not following myself. I wasn't walking my talk, I guess you could say. And I was really overwhelmed by the pressures of the system, and I often glanced over my self-care. Now that I'm older, I'm realizing that what energy I put into myself is really reflected in the quality of my work and anything I do. And I think this is really true, specifically as your position as a student board member. So in order to best serve others in your position, remember to adequately serve yourself first.
Alrighty, I think it's my turn. And I just want to reiterate what Joe just said. I think that last portion is very, very important, because if you don't take care of yourself first, you can't really help anybody else. And I think, yeah, that's something that we often forget. And I know that's something that I did too. But then the piece that I kind of kept coming back to was that it's okay not to know. I definitely remember joining the board and hearing the plethora and the storm of different acronyms that fly around on this board, and it felt like a whole nother language. And ironically, that's become very relevant in my life nowadays. I mean, I'm living in a different country and whatnot, and so being around in that in a literal different language, I feel that, and I think it's very important that we remind ourselves that every once in a while we don't have to be an expert, we don't have to know all the answers right away, and that it's okay not to know at the beginning. It'll take time, you'll get there, but what's important is that you're improving and that you feel like you're improving. You don't have to know it all at once.
I'm supposed to ask the next question, but I just wanted to say it is really refreshing to hear, like, it's okay not to know what you're doing, and that a lot of the language that is being spoken here today, it's new to me, so it's just really refreshing to hear that from all of you, because I just got sworn in like a couple hours ago. So I'm like, this is so new. But the next question is, what do you think prepared you the most for life after high school? And we can just go in this order.
I think for me personally, I became a very big self-advocate for myself. I've been through a lot of medical trauma since I left the board, which is unfortunate, but I feel like the board really prepared me, and my time on here prepared me to be a self-advocate in all aspects of my life, whether it be medical, whether it be where I'm at now at Gonzaga, like self-advocating for disability accommodations and access, and for my fellow peers to have disability accommodations and access. So I think also legal terminology and being able to like read legal terminology and stuff that has been really nice. It's not as difficult as it was when I was 16 and had no experience reading anything. So I think the two biggest things that the board prepared me for was just being my own person and being confident in who I am, and knowing that I have rights and that I can self-advocate for those rights.
Yeah, I can go next. I think that's a good question. I think my answer is twofold. Specifically, I think first, athletics taught me to really kind of harness the power of working as a team, but also the importance of being able to perform individually under pressure. Also taught me resilience. I definitely wanted to echo a lot of what Autumn said. As everyone knows, I'm sure we all agree, but I look up to Autumn so much because she is one of the most resilient people I've ever met. But I guess as it relates to athletics, injuries and setbacks, they happen in life and in athletics. So I think I'm better equipped to kind of handle difficult situations because of my athletics experiences. And then secondly, I really think mentorship and all my mentorship experiences have been super helpful. I think my opportunities like, being here on the SBE, they kind of teach you how to put what you've learned in the classroom and how to apply it to everyday life. And thinking back, I remember feeling very out of my depth during my first couple meetings here on the board. You know, as we all mentioned, so many new terms, so many new procedures, and it felt like very overwhelming. But the board members at the time, especially Baxter and Lindsay, who couldn't be here today, they were really integral in guiding me and giving me the confidence to put my thoughts and messages into action. Even when I was a senior student board member, working with Autumn and briefly Margarita, they still serve as my mentors, always reminding me to think differently and to seek solutions outside of my comfort zone. So for me, athletics and mentorship, those are my two most helpful things.
The one thing that I kept thinking about is that when I saw the question, and I've recently graduated university, so I graduated not this past June, but the June prior. And so I definitely see it in kind of two phases, during college and then post college. And the common theme between the two is definitely to remain flexible and to be willing to adapt and to kind of be a continuous learner. I mean, at no point will life just be completely static. Things are always changing. And so the ability to respond to those situations in a way that doesn't overwhelm you, or you don't feel like you're losing your sense of direction or whatever it may be, is really important. But at the same time, and something I definitely feel like I've had to remind myself more and more as time has gone on, is how important every once in a while it is just to take a break. I mean, I definitely think the common archetype of a student member on the state board of education for Washington is somebody that's very type A, very hardworking, have a lot of things going on in many different directions. But every once in a while, just rest. I mean, we really need to. I mean, that gets back to the idea of like, we really need to focus on ourselves every once in a while and make sure we're taking care of ourselves to take care of others. That's so important, because even going back to my first point, we need to stay flexible, but the way we stay flexible is to first have the energy and emotional bandwidth to do it. So don't put too much on your plate. Sometimes it's okay just to do nothing. And trust me, that's very important, at least I think.
Amen.
Exactly.
So I mean, I would extend this. You guys kind of talked about, a couple of you talked about, like legal acronyms, things like that, how that's played a role in your lives. Would you how would you say that SBE, like specifically, like things you've learned on the board, like change the way like you approach, I don't know, like your career path, or being deliberative, or like making choices, that type of stuff? I'm actually curious to hear this. So Joe, you can go first if you want, or Baxter, or anybody.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing that I really am intentional about, and I try to do in any professional space that I'm in, is to never be the smartest person in the room. And I know we've probably all heard that a lot, but that's how I learn best. Just learning from mentors and people that I can constantly learn from. Baxter had mentioned, we should constantly be in a cycle of continuous learning. So I think putting yourself in positions that put you a little bit out of your depth, give you a healthy sense of discomfort, I think that's something that, we can all put into practice in our daily lives, just to make sure that we're continually improving.
I think I want to say one, that was a very good answer. Putting yourselves in situations where you feel a little bit out of your league. Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to grow a lot, and it really challenges you, but also it does remind you of that sense of humility. You are the new person in the room, and that's okay. I mean, I do also want to touch on the fact that I literally think this board allowed me to get some internships and whatnot. I mean, being able to talk about this in interviews, this is something that, I mean, not that it's like the most fancy and like crazy thing to talk about, but much more so being 16, entering a room with a very educated group of adults in a very official environment. I mean, working in that type of environment or being exposed to it, that's not every 16-year-old has that opportunity, but then being able to relay that information and relay that experience, that's helped me a ton in my life. But then once again, I think just also like a a fun aspect is getting exposure to how policy is formed. I mean, literally when I see that a new policy has come through or whatever it is, there's a sense of either like small pride, or I'm like, oh, I kind of remember talking about that, or at least I kind of understand the mechanisms that go into that process.
Oh, I think if I could add on to that, I'm hoping to become a teacher. So I'm currently minoring in, yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I'm currently majoring in classics and English, so I can do archaeology as well as get my English degree, so I can get my master's in teaching. And one of the things that I've learned as now I'm a junior in college is that I am, even with only 3 years apart, I'm disconnected from high schoolers and what life is like. And I think the board really instilled in me this value of student voice. And I realized, like, you know what, I'm not in high school anymore. Even if like my experiences are 3 years ago, things are changing so fast that I don't really have that firsthand perspective anymore. And so I think what the board has really helped me with is always looking through and asking students and asking the people that are going through these situations specifically, and being able to say, you know what, I'm not in it anymore. Like, I can't say firsthand, like I need to talk to other people, and I need to listen to their perspectives, and I need to be open-minded about not what I think is best for them, but what they need and what they are saying to me. So I think that's something that's really important about this board, and that you guys hit nail right on the head with. So thank you for that.
Following up with that, I just wanted to ask, what are some like good ways you guys could think of to connect more with students besides like the 2 student representatives on the board? Outside from us two, how else can we connect with students?
Like as a student board member connecting with other students, my time on the board, I used social media quite a lot. I made all of my accounts public so that any of the students could follow me. And at every single conference or board meeting I went to, I was like, okay, like you need to follow me. I'm gonna ask you questions. We're gonna make a poll on this. And on every single like resolution or presentation that I did, I made sure I had at least like 100 student voices from different areas, kind of telling me how they felt and their perspective on what I was trying to do, and trying to gain that support from that way. Also, the AWSL, Association of Washington Student Leaders, their Student Voice and Advocacy Board is really great. I would also recommend the leadership camps and leadership teams, because a lot of the times leadership teams have access to a very wide group of students at their school, and so they're very easy to, you know, you get 6 leadership students and then they'll go back and basically tell their entire school about it. So places like Mount Triumph or Mission Peak Leadership Camp, those are great places to either attend or junior counselor at, or just get your information out that way. And then those kids come from all over the state, and then you can get more access throughout all. And you can also, like, it's not, you aren't alone in this. You can ask your friends, you can ask the other adult board members for their local schools and I've talked with principals before. I've gone into different schools and had principals and figured out administration and everything, and was able to talk with local schools about stuff. So yeah, just reaching out those ways for what I did personally.
Autumn, can you say how many people you had following you on your social media account, which unfortunately you don't have anymore? I sent it to
Yeah.
Puffin, and Puffin's like, it's not there anymore. So
I think when I was on the board, it was close to 2,000.
Okay.
I ended up closing it and then kicking off people I didn't know or never talked to. But it's probably around like 500 kids now. But yeah, so, but they can still talk to me. Like, you can still reach out. It's just on private now. So, but yeah, I use that as a as a really great avenue to reach out to students who, I mean, because a lot of kids just want more followers as well. So they'll just follow you because they want more followers. And then if you post about like, hey, do you want your voice to be heard on like a state policy that could affect you? And they're like, okay, I don't know who this person is, but I'm on board for this. And then you start a conversation. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, I think one rule of thumb that I really tried to implement in anything I did was to always try to meet the students where they're at. Kind of don't expect them to come to you, but instead, remove the barriers that are in place that are keeping that maintaining that gap between our voice as student board members and also their voice as students of Washington State. So I remember one thing that I really enjoyed was kind of student forums that we had at a couple of different board meetings throughout my term, where students from the immediate community that we were in would come. We would be able to talk with them, ask them questions, and hear first person about their experience in that community, because as we all know, one student's experience in one part of our state is drastically different from students from another part of the state. So definitely meet students where they're at. And just to reiterate, like Autumn had said, definitely utilize your network and the resources that you have as a student board member. Autumn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think during our year, we had a really big kind of like a survey that we did through the AWSL board where we talked about, or we asked it was basically a climate survey, and we used that a lot in our, in a couple different of our presentations that we did. So definitely utilizing tools like that, technology, meeting students where they're at. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And then I want to add providing as many mediums as possible. I mean, you guys have mentioned different forums, using technology, using Twitter, those kinds of tools, surveys. I think that's really important because you never know where some notice and kind of grab on to that. But then one really concrete idea that we tried to implement a little bit more on the AWSL side of the student board position. We were trying to reinstate, what was it? It's like local conferences through each of the student members' schools on the board, right? So I was from Gig Harbor High School, and I believe, I'm pulling this out of my head from, 6 years ago right now. Where we were trying to form kind of like a small coalition of schools in my local region where we would meet up. I think it was like 2 or 3 times a year with leadership from those schools to try and collect that kind of information, to try and put forward some sort of event, whatever it may be, as an area-wide organization. That in my area didn't work out so well, but I really do think the idea was good. And so if that was taken and ran with, I think it'd be a great tool, because I think the best way to reach people is with people in the school, right? And so if you're able to leverage those connections, the other student members on the AWSL board, I think that's huge. And then really trying to expand that network, because a Twitter reach or, a survey, it's just not as in your face, but it's also not as warm and welcoming, right? Whereas a person being like, hey, what do you think about this? And especially when somebody knows that person, a student, that's their friend, that's a very different conversation than just a survey or something through a screen.
I'll tell you guys, it's like a constant thing. I think we talk about it basically every time I'm in an SB meeting, this topic comes up, like, how do you better connect with students? Because like for us, like I'll give you an example, we have these like meetings with like groups, and like 2 kids will show up. So then it's like drawing blood from a stone. You gotta like interrogate these people for like half an hour. And then you got to report this out, because obviously like the board, it only works if they can hear from students, and so they do need to hear what we've taken out of these people using like enhanced interrogation tactics. So I actually appreciate the insight a lot. And you mentioned Twitter, Baxter, and I'm a big Twitter guy, so that was a great mention for me, so I appreciate that. But I'm curious, so you guys talked a little bit about your background, so or what you're doing now. So I'm curious, like, give us a more detailed view. So like you guys leave the board, you guys go to college. So what's that like? And what are your future plans and that type of stuff?
Hey, Pavan, one second. You're saying you don't have a lot of student participants. Should we make some room in the budget for a door prize budget so you can get some cool stuff? So you can get more.
Yeah, if they listen, if they're, because I feel like, people
Not a
will
budget
get it,
request.
pick the gift card from it. So why don't we do this? If you're in for half an hour or more, then you get, whatever prize this is. I think that could be a great thing. Yeah, gift cards, free phones, free dinners, that type of stuff, coupons. I think that could be great. But yeah, why don't you guys give us more background? Because I know, Joe, I was told that you're in DC or you have been. So I'm currently in DC right now in my internship. So I'm especially jazzed to see, because I think we have kind of the same kind of interests. So anyway, go ahead. I've talked for long.
Yeah, no, I think I guess I can start us off. So, wow, it seems time has flown, but yeah, I'm finally an incoming senior at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. I'm majoring in government with a minor in public health. On campus, I'm captain of the varsity swimming and diving team, president of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, a tour guide, barista, and I help out with organizing the new student orientation. Last summer, I interned with it's kind of a telehealth logistics company, and I helped to develop business solutions that kind of bridge the gap between the healthcare system and individuals who needed care at home. And this was especially interesting to work through, during the pandemic and everything. And as I had mentioned earlier, this summer I'm working at a local law firm. A lot of what I'm doing right now is fintech transactions, and then I'm also looking at natural resource regulations and public land use. And then also public entity formation. So that's been really, really interesting for me. In the future, I hope to explore the possibility of law school or possibly a master's in public health program, or go straight into the workforce working in public affairs or public administration. And this board I can firmly say that was kind of my main inspiration, wanting to pursue those areas. But yeah, I mean, just as I was during my time in the SBE, I continue to be really passionate about providing resources for people to self-actualize in whatever environments they're in. So, yeah.
Not to interrupt whoever's going to share, but I was going to say a public health and a government major could not be more relevant right now, especially with how those two have interacted in the last 2 years. That's smart play. Anyway, let you guys keep going.
Sure, I can go. Yeah, so I left the SBE and graduated high school in June of 2017. The following fall, I went to the University of Washington. There, I studied business management with a focus in information systems and a minor in Spanish, and then what I would like to say is an unofficial focus in linguistics. I took a lot of classes in that realm, but I never actually completed the minor. There's some courses that I just really didn't enjoy, so I didn't actually finish it, but I still love linguistics quite a lot. Throughout my time at UW, I was a member of a social fraternity and a business fraternity. The social fraternity, I was the housing manager, and that was quite the experience. You don't want to have to physically take care of a structure of over 100-year-old building with 50 guys living in it. That was quite the experience, but a very good resume talk once again. Beyond that, I was the vice president of my business fraternity. I had to handle that during COVID, so that was once again another very interesting experience, but very fruitful, and I felt like I learned a lot from that. And then, yes, as I mentioned, once I graduated university, I moved to Spain last September. This past year, I was an English teacher over there and an English assistant. And when I say English assistant, I literally was a language assistant, meaning, oh, how do you pronounce this word? How can you read this paragraph? I was purely a reproduction unit. So, but then in the afternoon, I worked in an English academy where I was actually teaching the class, directing the class. They were my own students. And so I actually got my own little taste of being a true teacher. And wow, I have a lot of respect for that field, but I will not be going back to it. So thank you all of you, but that is not that is a hard line of work. And then this coming September, I am moving back and I'll be starting something much more closely related to what I'm guessing will be my long-term career as a robot process automation engineer. And so what I will be doing is I'll be developing kind of like code and programs for businesses to tackle redundancies in their workflows, to kind of automate things and to speed up their processes. Please don't ask me any specifics. I have yet to start the position. So if you send me an email in a few months and I'll be able to answer better. But beyond that, yeah, that's where I am.
Baxter, can I ask, where at in Spain are you?
Yes, I'm in a town called Cádiz, Spain. So if you are familiar with Spain at all, this is how I always explain it. Madrid is here, Barcelona is here, and then Cádiz is on the other side. So, and I love this fact, I'm closer to Tangier, Morocco than I am to Madrid. So it's a very warm climate. It's great. It's very different from Western Washington, but very, very, very different, but a really good experience. And I'm very happy there.
Thank you.
Well, I graduated in 2020. Didn't really have a graduation ceremony, but that's okay because of COVID. I am at Gonzaga University. My first year was fully online, so that was a experience to tackle trying to do online school. It was probably the most difficult school year I've ever experienced. But I got through it. I'm majoring in classics and English, so that'll set me up to be not technically an archaeologist, but like a archaeologist's assistant, so I can be able to go work on digs and everything. And with an English degree, I'm gonna go straight into getting my master's in teaching, hopefully. And I wanna become a teacher and do archaeology over the summer. I'm currently working as a swim instructor for the outdoor pools. I work with preschoolers and babies for parent-child lessons. It is the cutest thing I have ever done. Little babies learning how to blow bubbles, hands down, best thing ever. And then I am also the Family Activity Center program coordinator for our local Valley YMCA, which is kind of a big title. Mainly what I do is I color with kids and we watch movies and I do little events and everything. But it's a lot of fun. I've been able to kind of implement and kind of play around with my own kind of classroom with different kiddos. And we do I've been trying to do more of self-esteem activities, and depending on the age, they'll like it. 7-year-olds are like, I don't want to do this, I just want to color. But then 12-year-olds are like, wow, I really needed that today. So it's definitely been really interesting. I thought I wanted to teach high school, but now I'm not so sure. So that's been difficult trying to decide if I want to do secondary or primary. But yeah, that's what my life's been like.
I just wanted to say it's really amazing to hear what you guys are all doing. I personally don't know what I want to do after high school. So all these ideas are just wow. So, but next question is, do you see a value in would you participate in the SBE alumni network?
I'm gonna start on this one. I definitely would say yes. Ironically, through my business fraternity, it's called AK Psi, we had a similar, let's say, alumni mentorship. And what we did is that either recent graduates or whatever it was, we just kept in contact with them. And then we would send them a survey and said, hi, would you be willing to participate? Given that this pool is a lot smaller, it wouldn't have to be so, so let's say to the masses, right? Wouldn't have to be a survey, just a simple email sent out to the older student members. And they would say yes or no, depending upon those results. We would connect people that were interested, that were current members of the fraternity. And I was one of those people that said yes. And what I did with my mentors, I think at first we met once a month throughout my college career. And then we still meet every 6 months, just randomly. We send each other an email and we just catch up about life. Her name's Carolyn. She's become somebody that I definitely confide in. She helps me kind of guide life decisions and whatnot. And so, but in terms of how it actually worked, it's really just a conversation and whatever the mentor and the mentee really decide is their relationship. But I think it really is a very fruitful thing because all of us that have been student members, we share this common connection. And and so it's kind of like a springboard, right? We go off in different directions, but we still have that common base. And from that common base, I don't know. I just think it helps because I remember being in your position. And before I end this little soapbox, I want to say this. Having heard everything that we just did, please remember this, because I remember being in those shoes and hearing, wow, I mean, these people are only a few years older than me, and they've done all these things. How, like, I have to do all these things. That was something I always put on myself. Please remember, these are things that have happened day by day, year by year, whatever it may be. Part of the reason why I'm saying this now is that is something that Carolyn, my mentor from AK Psi, definitely instilled in me, that Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And so I don't know. That's something I learned from my mentor that just happens to be kind of relatable to this moment. And I just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, I think it'd be a great idea.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that, for new student board member and everything, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was your age, and I've changed my major like 4 times now. And it's okay. It's all about learning what you love to do. And I remember when I was 3, I wanted to do archaeology, but I called it architecture, and that was very confusing for a while for me. But then I totally forgot about it, and then for basically my entire life, I never wanted to do it again. And then I got to college and I took 1 classics class, and now I know like 4 different dialects of ancient Greek, and it's like my passion. And so, you know, it's fine if you don't know now, and it's fine if you don't know when you graduate, and it's fine if you don't know your 2nd year of college, because I didn't either. So yeah, just adding on to that. And I think I would too be extremely interested in wanting some sort of student alumni group as well. I remember when Joe left the board and I was a senior member, I would text him and I would be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do? You're gone. I can't do this alone. And then when I left the board, Margarita would text me and she would be like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? I don't know what to do. And just having that connection is just so important, of like being able to say, no, it's okay, you're doing great. And like, you know what, I don't know what to do either. Why don't we talk to MJ? You know what, she'll know. Like, and then I'll tell you to go to MJ, and then MJ will be like, we'll figure it out, it's okay. And so just having that connection was life-saving, honestly. The day before a presentation at like 1 a.m. where I was like, should I send that email? I'm gonna send the email anyway. So I think an alumni, just being able to connect over this amazing niche experience together is a very valuable thing.
Yeah, I think along those same lines too, I think we have the unique perspective of being, recently off the board, so we can kind of reflect on our time and see kind of what did work and what didn't work as well. And I think all of us, all former student board members and all former board members in general, will always kind of have this advisory and advocacy portion to our personality. And I think one way that we could really be a resource for new student board members is to kind of like act as a impromptu sounding board for presentations or really anything else leading up to each board meeting. I don't know, something that I'm imagining in my mind is that we would all come onto a Zoom meeting. The student would kind of give their presentation, ask questions. We could probably give feedback and provide any insight that we have on the issue. Because I think there are pieces of advice that only student board members can offer other student board members. So I think that would be really unique insight. Also, I think Baxter mentioned the mentorship part of this. I think for navigating everything outside of the SBE, whether that be the transition from high school and whatever leads beyond, I think we've mentioned that we have such a diverse and rich network here. I think I would really love to see how we can make that useful.
So if that is everybody, I wanted to really give a round of applause to you all for the work you did on the board, for what you managed to accomplish after that, and for coming here today, spend another hour in one of these meetings with us. But we've got a cool thing lined up. Apparently there's a resolution honoring, the input of people across the state like us, and then the work that you have all done across the years that kids have been allowed to be on the board. So I'm not sure how this procedure works because this is my first time as a voting member and my first time ever doing this. So I'm sure Randy will be on hand to correct me if I do it wrong, but I'm gonna read the right words to introduce this. And I believe that is that we should move to adopt the resolution honoring student voice as shown in Exhibit A. Is that accurate? Is that good? Everybody? Okay,
I
cool.
move, and then repeat it.
What was that?
Thank you,
I
Randy.
move to.
Oh, okay. I do it. Okay. I move to adopt the resolution honoring student voice as shown in Exhibit A.
I second.
I second that.
Okay,
And Bill's gonna read the motion,
we have a
resolution.
We have a motion on the floor. I will read the resolution, leave room for any discussion we might have after, and then we will put it to a vote. Washington State Board of Education resolution honoring student voice. Whereas the State Board of Education has a long tradition dating back to 1974 of inviting 2 high school students to serve a non-voting term on the state board, and whereas the 2005 legislature codified the practice of students serving as non-voting members on the board beginning on January 1st, 2006. And whereas 19 students have served on the board since the codification. And whereas the student members on the State Board of Education represent over 1 million students across the state who are directly impacted by the policy decisions the board makes. And whereas the State Board of Education believes the involvement and insights of student board members have been invaluable to the board's deliberations and a critical contribution for the development and adoption of education policies that are student-centered and responsive to student needs. And whereas the State Board of Education changed its bylaws in 2019 to allow student members to make an advisory vote. And whereas student members have demonstrated a track record of casting thoughtful votes reflecting the input of their peers and providing an essential window for the rest of the board members to consider the student perspective before voting on policy decisions. And whereas student members have been influential in advocating for issues concerning students, including financial education, personalized learning, ethnic studies, mental health, and student voice. And whereas in the 2022 legislative session, the board advocated for agency request legislation to extend voting authority to the student members on the board, ensuring that their input is not merely symbolic, but is truly valued and impactful. And whereas the request legislation substitutes Senate Bill 5497, sponsored by Senator Claire Wilson, passed the legislature and was signed into law by Governor Inslee on March 11th, 2022, taking effect on June 9th, 2022, and therefore be it resolved that the State Board of Education celebrates the passage of this legislation granting student members voting authority on the board, and thanks our partner advocates and legislative champions who helped make this possible. And therefore be it further resolved that the State Board of Education honors the contributions of its student board members, past, present, and future. And therefore be it further resolved that the State Board of Education commits to continue growing as an organization to better center student voice in its work. Signed, Bill Glabba, Chair. So at this point, we will open for any board discussion. MJ.
Well, I always got comments about student voice, so I'll start this. I think this is just awesome. I put in the chat, it's so great to hear from you all, Joe, Baxter, and Autumn. Thank you so much for being here and your contributions to the work that we've had on the board. I mean, your voice has been integral, and I know it's impacted me personally, your experiences and your feedback. and watching you grow and evolve, you know, through your experience here. I think Baxter, you might have been on the board before I was on the board. I think, right? I think we just served 1 year together. So I didn't get to see the full, you know, 2 years, but I got to see your, and I was just thinking, I have to say this is going to be a really cheesy comment, but I keep thinking of you with your short haircut, and I want to put the picture of that up there with your picture right now. It's a little different, but you've grown so much. And so it's awesome. Just so impactful. And I think this is so significant, your contribution, that I fully support this resolution, and honor to our current students that are here. And Pevin, you know, your work last year in advocating for the student voice vote with the legislators. And Pevin, you did an excellent job in doing that. And he stood on the shoulders of Joe and Baxter, Autumn, and all the other student members that have been here in doing that, truly, because it was that evolution of work that happened. And we, you know, when I first came on the board, Joe, Baxter, you guys were doing presentations to the board, right? And only students had to do that. Like adult board members didn't have to do that. So you had this extra weight on you. And now we've kind of evolved that into something that looks a little different and yet as impactful, or, you know, beyond that as well. So it's just know that everybody's contributed greatly, and it's impactful. And we were talking about it last night at the forum about how this is symbolic, not just because we now have students voting, you know, on the Board of Education. We're hoping that that moves the rest of the state. And I think people are looking at it. So this doesn't just impact the State Board of Education in this, you know, group. I believe it's going to have long-term impacts across our state, and to raise student voice the way it should be advocated and valued in our system. So fully support it.
Great, thanks, MJ. Any further discussion?
Patty, I just want to give a shout out to Margarita McKenna, who can't be here, but when I think of all the work done that they've done, from the modern day racism and education panel to McKenna's heavy lift on the legislation too. So shout out to those two fine people as well.
And Lindsay, yeah.
Thank you. Any other further discussion?
Yeah, this is Kevin. Great to see the students being here, especially the ones that I haven't met. And great to see where you guys all ended up as well. And you know, a couple comments, you know, meeting the students where they are to gather their feedback and be the voice, and using the tools available, whether it's social media or starting meetings. And thank you for doing that work, and also continuing to do that outreach. And I think the board should give them the resources and the budget to do as good a job as they can. And I love the idea of the student mentor, student alumni member hive mind or something that you guys all form, so that new students can come on board and don't feel as you know, like, oh my God, I'm all by myself. No, there's people, I don't know, maybe on Slack or something, you guys can all chat or whatever. And so no, that's great to see all of the student members talking to each other, and folks that I haven't met plays a trail. And you know, we're so glad that we put the policy behind it, so that the students do have the vote. So glad we were able to do that. Should have done it earlier, but I'm glad we did it this year.
Thank you, Kevin. Any further discussion? Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, say thank you to all the students, for the impact that all of you have made, and will continue to make. You know, student voice has always been a huge passion of mine. When I was on a local school board in Pasco, pushed to add a third student representative, and that was one of the best decisions that I was able to be a part of. So seeing this progression is really exciting, and just to see the continued impact. I share a little personal story. I actually, so my grandpa passed away a couple years ago in the midst of COVID. And we finally had a celebration of life for him just recently. And I learned a little bit about, I heard a story that I'd never heard before about him just a few weeks ago. And I realized that part of sort of my own legacy and where this passion came from. He was invited, this is 50 years ago, he was invited to a Rotary Club meeting. And at this meeting, the speaker got up and the premise of his topic was basically was talking about teenagers. And the substance of his talk was that they're no good. And my grandpa at the time had 4 of them at home. And after the speaker got done, the speaker paused and asked for questions. And my grandpa stood up and he said, you know what? I'm a guest here at this club. And I don't know if I will ever be invited back, but I think you're full of crap. The speaker sat down, the audience or the room erupted in applause. The speaker sat down and my grandpa was invited to join so anybody that thinks that, you know, anytime I hear somebody going off about kids these days or any of that kind of stuff, they're full of it. They haven't met our students. They don't know what they're talking about. So they just need to meet a few of you. And I think, you know, it's pretty exciting to me to see the legislative process and how that played out, because I think, frankly, I know there were a lot of legislators that their first idea when this whole thing came about was like, you know, I explained to people, I said, you know, at first they're like, yeah, I don't think this is such a good idea. And then I told them, and then they met our students. And they're like, okay, yeah, where do I sign? I'm on board. So the impact that you're having is real, it's lasting. Each of you have made you know, I've already had a legacy that you've left that will have a ripple effect beyond what you'll ever see. You know, each of you keep being you and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Any other further discussion? No, okay, if not, I would recognize myself for some comments to add to the discussion. This, to be able to be here and occupy this seat is an honor. Student voice is something I've always been an advocate for. I think our students have been ignored long enough. Right? They've been ignored, they've been set aside, they've been marginalized, and yet they're the ones that have to do the day-to-day operations of our K-12 system. So I just want to say it's an honor for me. Thank you to the students who participated in the past. Thank you for the alumni. Thank you for to Pavan and Donalda for being here. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. So I just want to say that it's an honor for me to be here and sit in this seat while this act happens. So I'm proud of this group. So, okay, with that, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. I'll do the roll call list and we'll go down the list. Hopefully someone's taking notes, but I think this one will. Let's just go ahead and vote. Okay, first on the list. We have a motion and a second and sufficient discussion. Let's go ahead and put this to a vote to adopt this resolution. Pavan Venkati Krishnan.
Aye.
Pavan Venkati Krishnan votes aye. Donalda Brantley. Donalda Brantley votes aye. MJ Bolt.
Aye.
MJ Bolt votes aye. Ryan Brault.
Aye.
Ryan Brault votes aye. Brooke Brown.
Aye.
Brooke Brown votes aye. Jan Brown.
Aye.
Jan Brown votes aye. Mary Furtakis.
Aye.
Mary Furtakis votes aye. Dr. Angela Griffin.
Absolutely aye.
Dr. Angela Griffin votes aye. Harriet Martin Morris.
Aye.
Harriet Martin Morris votes aye. Dr. Paul Petrie.
Aye.
Dr. Paul Petrie votes aye. Dr. Susanna Reyes.
Aye.
Dr. Susanna Reyes votes aye. Superintendent Chris Reichdahl.
Aye.
Superintendent Reichdahl votes aye. Dr. Dana Riley Black.
Aye.
Dr. Dana Riley Black votes aye. Kevin Wang.
Aye.
Kevin Wang votes aye. Patty Wood.
Aye.
Patty Wood votes aye. And Bill Calapa, I also vote aye. Motion carries unanimously.